In the beginning of the movie, we see a beam of light from somewhere. A man was driving a truck and it crashed into an old Shander mining company gate. The man drove the truck to a cornfield and immediately got off and went into the house to turn on an appliance. Something seemed to be moving on the ground and the man was waiting for it to arrive. As the object approached, the man tried to step on the trigger device to start a generator, but the device did not work. He took a tool from the drawer and sat on a chair. Soon some smoke entered the house and became a creature. The creature attacked the man while he was holding a device. Then the device fell into the floor. Elsewhere, a woman named Callie who was shaving her son named Trevor. Then his daughter, Phoebe, was seen experimenting with increasing the electrical power in her house. Not long after, a man came to collect the rent from her. Callie said that she would pay it off as soon as she cashed the check her father had left her long ago. Callie's father had just died on a plantation. The owner of the house then put the letter of eviction on the door of the house. Then Callie and her 2 children went to the plantation, where her father used to live in Somerville. When they arrived, they entered and looked around the old house. Callie said that they would stay there because they had been evicted by the owner of the house they rented. While they were there, suddenly a shocking earthquake occurred and they hid under the table. Before long, a woman who was a friend of the father said that the father left a lot of debt and could barely pay his electricity bill. In the afternoon, they went to buy food at a burger restaurant. Trevor saw a maid working there and was attracted to her. Trevor went out and tried to apply for a job in that place so he can be close to the girl he likes. After that, they returned home. Phoebe, who was lying down, was suddenly startled by the chessboard that fell by itself. She looked back at the chessboard beside her bed. Trevor, who couldn't sleep, wandered around the house and he found a warehouse where there was an old car covered with cloth. The next morning, Callie drove Trevor to work and Phoebe to school. In the classroom, Phoebe's teacher named Gary Gruberson put on a film and left the students to watch. Just then, a boy who called himself Podcast sat next to Phoebe and they got to know each other. Elsewhere, Callie bought some paints and other tools to repair the house. The shop owner said that the Callie father, nicknamed the Dirt Farmer, worked the land every week but he never planted anything. He also often bought tools and equipment at the store. Back in class, the children were bored with the movie the teacher was playing. Suddenly the earthquake happened again in a short time. Phoebe went into the teacher's room and she saw the seismic map made by the teacher. Apparently the teacher was a seismologist who was researching earthquake activity that occurred every day in Somerville. The teacher said that the earthquake was not caused by tectonic or volcanic plate activity. After school, Phoebe and Podcast chatted as they walk. They chatted about many things, including about ghosts in the city. Phoebe said if she doesn't believe in ghosts. Hearing this, Podcast immediately invited Phoebe to visit a mine, namely the Shander mine, which was closed since the 40s. The Podcast said that the mine that produces selenium was closed because one by one the miners jumped into the mine pit and died. The incident was then referred to as the Shandorian curse. Inside the mine, they also saw the carvings on the walls were made by someone. Trevor, who was in the warehouse, opened the car cover and saw an old truck with the Ghostbuster logo. After looking around, Phoebe and Podcast were on their way home, and when they reached Phoebe's yard, Podcast was surprised to find out that Phoebe was the granddaughter of the Dirt Farmer. In the evening, after brushing her teeth, Phoebe saw that the chess pawn she had left this morning had moved. Phoebe tried to play it again, and it turned out that the pawn moved by itself. After that, the detector that Phoebe found suddenly lights up. By following the signal from the device, Phoebe found a puzzle on the floor. After successfully putting the puzzle together, he found a hole in the floor and a mysterious tool in it. Not knowing what tool she found, Phoebe brought the tool to class. The teacher, Mr. Gruberson, was quite surprised to see a device that turned out to be a ghost trap. At first he thought the tool was a fake tool, but it turned out to be a real tool. Gruberson showed facts about the Ghostbuster that was popular in the 80s and carried out ghost arrests in New York City. Feeling curious about the tool, Gruberson invited his 2 students to test the tool. The device was apparently still functioning, and when it opened, a ghost like a giant wolf came out and immediately flew towards the Shander mine. Gruberson, who was a little surprised and learned of the fact that Phoebe's grandfather was a member of Ghostbuster, immediately took the children to Phoebe's house. Arriving at the house, they were quite impressed with the creepy conditions in the house. Podcast found an Aztec death whistle and asked for it from Phoebe's mother. Callie then took Mr. Gruberson to look around the house. Meanwhile, Podcast found a book about ghosts and he saw a page where there was a picture of the creature they saw coming out of the trap. In the book, it was stated that the Sumerians believed that there was a world of the dead where the spirits of the dead were led by a god called Gozer and guarded by the gatekeeper and the key master. In order for Gozer to be resurrected and walk among humans, the gatekeeper and key master must have the form of a beast. Elsewhere, Trevor, who worked at a burger restaurant, was invited by his colleagues to take a walk on the mountain in the Mount Shander area. When he reached the top of the hill, Trevor sat down and talked to the girl he liked, Lucky. When suddenly the device they were sitting on moved and something appeared from the hole. A light came out of the hole and a voice called Gozer was heard. Those who saw it just laughed and didn't take it seriously. At Phoebe's house, Gruberson found an old map of Somerville written in ancient characters. He asked Phoebe's mother for the map. Phoebe herself was seen using a tracking device in the yard, and she found a room that turned out to be her grandfather's laboratory. The grandfather's spirit, traced by the tool held by Phoebe, led him to a tool that was being developed by the grandfather, who turned out to be Egan Spangler, and Phoebe tried to repair the tool. Later that night, Phoebe tried to get more information from watching Ghostbuster videos on the internet. The next day, Phoebe and Podcast tested a device he'd repaired last night in the selenium processing factory's yard. It turned out that the proton gun can work. Just then they heard a strange sound from inside the factory. They decided to go inside. Inside the factory they found a ghost eating an iron pipe. They tried to catch him, but unfortunately the creature managed to escape. Trevor, who managed to repair his grandfather's Ghostbuster, tried to drive it, and on the way he met his sister Phoebe and Podcast. Phoebe and Podcast got in the car and Phoebe told his brother that their grandfather was a member of the famous Ghostbuster of the 80s. Not long after, a news came on the radio informing that an animal had eaten someone's car until it was almost gone. Phoebe and Podcast immediately guessed that it was the doing of the metal-chewing ghost they called Muncher. Hearing the news, they immediately rushed to the center of the city and chased the Muncher. Phoebe found a gun seat in the car and attempted to fire a proton at the Muncher. Due to the difficulty of catching the Muncher with a speeding car, the protons fired hit several buildings in the city. Muncher tried to escape and headed for the mountain, but there, he was caught and entered into a ghost catcher. Because the incident caused chaos in the city, Phoebe, Trevor, and Podcast were detained in prison. Phoebe asked permission to call, and it turns out she called one of her grandfather's colleagues named Ray Stantz. Ray told her that his dead grandfather, Egan, used to run off with all their equipment and bankrupt Ghostbuster. Egan also called Ray 10 years ago saying that the world would soon end in darkness. After that, the police came to end Phoebe's conversation. Callie and Gruberson came to free Phoebe and Trevor. They were free. But all the ghost-catching equipment was confiscated by the police. Phoebe was annoyed, but Mom held back Phoebe and immediately took them home. At home, Callie and Phoebe argue about grandfather, whom her mother called a madman who didn't care about family. After dropping Phoebe, Trevor, and Callie home, Gruberson went to Walmart to buy something. There he accidentally saw a marshmallow doll emerge from the package and was followed by other dolls. Gruberson also saw the figure of a beast-like creature eating a snack. The creature noticed Gruberson's presence and immediately chased after him. Gruberson managed to get into the car, but unfortunately the creature managed to catch him. Phoebe, Podcast, Trevor and Lucky, curious about the haunted events in Somerville, discussed the map at a cafe. Lucky said that the city of Somerville was once built by a man named Ivo Shander. It was Ivo Shander who also owned the building that used to be the building where the Ghostbusters caught ghosts in New York. Wanting to know the connection of all that, they went to the mine and researched inside. There, they found a statue of Gozer as well as a death pit. They also found Ivo Shander's body, which was still intact. Something appeared from the pit of death and seemed to be rising. Phoebe was almost attracted by the creature in the hole, but then several proton gunners appeared at various angles, preventing the creature from appearing. Earthquakes that occur every day in Somerville were because the creatures trying to get out were held back by proton weapons. In the end, they discovered the fact that their grandfather was the one who built all of that to protect humanity. Phoebe's mother, who was at home, found a detector in the room. She then followed the signal and came to his father's laboratory, where she found many pictures of her hanging on the walls. Suddenly, a collection of smoke entered the room and transformed into a beast creature called Azul. Apparently, the creature entered Callie's body. She mentioned the Keymaster and was looking for him. Meanwhile, Gruberson, who was possessed by the Keymaster creature, destroyed the proton weapon in the mine so that the creatures in the death pit could be released to all corners of the city. The earthquake continued, and it looked like the mountain was about to erupt. Callie, who was possessed by the gatekeeper, immediately ran towards the mountain. Phoebe immediately took the detector and checked the ground around the house. Phoebe eventually learned that the area was set up as a trap to capture Gozer. Phoebe's grandfather had been preparing a device that was bigger and capable of holding hundreds of creatures. Phoebe told the others that the Gozer could only rise if two evil souls, who were the gatekeeper and the Keymaster, unite physically, or in other words, make love. Meanwhile, Callie, who was possessed by the gatekeeper, finally met Gruberson, who was possessed by the figure of the Keymaster. They finally got together and made love. Phoebe and the others were wearing Ghostbusters clothes and were planning to catch the ghosts. They returned to the police station to collect their equipment. Phoebe tried to get close to Gozer, hoping he would fall into her trap. Actually, the main key to defeating Gozer was to capture one of his guards. Phoebe successfully defeated the gatekeeper lodged in her mother's body. They also rushed off to trap Gozer's grandfather's house. Callie finally understood what had happened to them. When they got there, the Keymaster followed them. Lucky immediately shot him, and when Trevor was about to fire his second weapon, suddenly his weapon was damaged because it was devoured by the marshmallow ghost. Because the Keymaster had started to fight, Phoebe finally rushed to open the trap, but when Callie pressed the pedal, the electricity went out instantly. The Keymaster reclaimed the ghost trap and released the gatekeeper who had been caught earlier. The gatekeeper then entered Lucky's body. Now Gozer was back, as before, and almost attacked Phoebe, but fortunately the Ghostbusters, who were not young anymore, came to fight Gozer. Unfortunately, their strength was not strong enough to defeat the Gozers. Unexpectedly, Phoebe attacked Gozer alone and almost lost, but suddenly the grandfather appeared and helped Phoebe so she could survive. The other three Ghostbuster members also helped out. Finally, Trevor managed to re-energize the capacitor, and when Callie saw it, she immediately stepped on the pedal to open the trap. Finally, Gozer and other ghosts were caught and trapped in the tools that had been prepared. The grandfather, Egan, also had time to say goodbye to his grandson, and he apologized to Callie, who he had been ignoring for all the time. Egan sacrificed everything to keep the demons from coming out and destroying the world. So that's how the movie ends. It was a great movie to watch. If you enjoy the video, please hit the like button and the subscribe as well as bell button so you will not miss the new video from Full Movie Recap channel. See you in the next video.